Hello and welcome to South Asia Focus. I'm Smita Prakash. The ongoing crisis in Yemen just refuses to die down as Saudi Arabia and its coalition forces mount attack after attack on Shiite Houthi rebels, throwing up concerns about collateral civilian damage. The crisis threatens to engulf South Asia too, with Bangladesh and Pakistan announcing their support for Saudi-led forces and Pakistan even contemplating or unofficially joining the military offensive alongside Saudi Arabia to fight the Houthis. To discuss this and more, we have with us leading South Asian security expert C Uday Bhaskar. Thank you for speaking with us. The immediate fallout of the crisis in Yemen. Now, we have Indians coming back, Bangladeshis, Pakistani workers, Sri Lankans coming back. Once that part is over, the rescue and maybe the rehab part is over, then comes the problem of the expat workers not having, the remittances which were coming. That problem is there. What about the South Asians who are there for decades, people of Indian origin, Gujaratis, Keralites who have gone there and lived there for decades on end, second, third generation Yemenis? Would they be attacked? Would they be targeted now by the various factions there?
I would say that if you look at the internal situation in Yemen today, there is increasing turbulence and therefore insecurity. Now, in the first instance, those Indians who were stranded, I think there was a certain expectation that India would use its assets and capabilities to bring them back. And this has been done, I would say, quite successfully. And in a way, one could link it with the Indian effort when in Lebanon, we had a similar situation and Indian citizens and those who needed help from other South Asian countries were evacuated fairly, I would say, speedily and as effectively as is possible.
And is that happening now?
Like, it is happening in the sense the Indians have come back.
Okay.
Now, I have not seen any report about the other South Asian.
Sri Lanka has put in a request
and I think Nepal also. But this is something that India has done, I would say, quite spontaneously, that if there is capacity and we are able to bring our South Asian neighbors, also give them the same sense of security, India has done it. Now, currently in Yemen, my reading is that the situation is looking bleak. The reason I'm saying this is that this is a very distinctive conflict, that this is the first time that we are seeing Saudi Arabia taking the lead and also soliciting the support of other Islamic countries and particularly those of the Sunni faction. And they are attacking Yemen, which actually is perhaps the poorest country when you look at the Arab world. There is a subtext which is about the way in which the Houthis, who are seen as Shia Zaydis, are resisting what you might call as the Saudi initiative. So to that extent,
this has become extended. You think that Saudi Arabia was not justified in getting a coalition together? I mean, they share a border, and if they felt a sense of threat,
well, I would say that
it's just a Shia-Sunni conflict.
No, I would say it's a call that Saudi Arabia had to make because there was this anxiety that this is the first time that there is a challenge to the territoriality. If you look at the geography of Aden and Saudi, and there have been various other spots of unrest, including Syria, the Islamic State, but never has a threat come as directly to the territory of Saudi Arabia. So therefore, they raise the ante. But my reading is that as an analyst, that this is not likely to get resolved in a very quick or for that matter in a neat way. You can see that Saudi is already hoping to get the support of other countries, including Pakistan, as far as South Asia is concerned.
That itself is a very complicated thing. Is Pakistan part of this coalition? There seems to be a sense of denial in Pakistan that they are going to respond and they are agreeing in principle for a military coalition with Saudi Arabia to tackle the Yemen problem. But as far as reports coming out from Yemen, that they're already part of it.
I think Pakistan is again following a very ambiguous policy. On one hand, they are saying that they are considering the request that has come from Saudi Arabia, and there is a certain dissent within Pakistan. For instance, if you see the English media, it's being repeatedly said that let us not get drawn into this because of the Shia-Sunni dimension. There is a 20% population in Pakistan, and Pakistan is dealing with its own sectarian divide. The Shia-Sunni divide in Pakistan is very, very deep, very violent, very bloody. The Pakistan army is already dealing with their own internal Taliban and terrorism issue. So there is one school which says that we should not get involved in what is really a Saudi-led war now, which has got the Shia Sunni contour. But at the same time, the subtext is that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is beholden to Riyadh, to the kind of support that Saudi Arabia has extended to him. And I think the final
personally or as a country?
Well, personally,
both.
If you remember, because
when
he was exiled and
Correct.
When General
but
Musharraf was in
even
power.
with Pakistan, I mean, it's militarily
they are dependent. Hydrocarbons, the aid, and Saudi Arabia now is expecting more than that. It's payback time. So my reading is that there is going to be an attempt to try and fudge the issue, if you know what I mean. That Pakistan will perhaps provide assets. Now, air cover is something that can be provided by Pakistan because they do have that capability. The real crunch is going to come when they want boots on the ground. Is that the only country
in the coalition which has the air power capability?
Well, Egypt and I would say Pakistan, Jordan are the countries that have reasonably, even the UAE.
Jordan too?
UAE, they also have, if you remember, UAE even participated in the war in Syria. So I think Saudi would perhaps initially expect that there would be some kind of contribution from Pakistan. But the real challenge will be when you need boots on the ground. So that is my reason for being a little less than optimistic that this is going to end quickly.
Because none of these countries can provide boots on the ground?
Not the smaller countries. I mean, the only two countries that have that kind of depth and manpower in their armies, to my reading, are Egypt and Pakistan.
So it's going to stay a West Asian conflict even though it has international ramifications?
As of now, yes, because I don't see any of the other major powers getting involved, because the resistance coming from the side of Aden and what we now describe as the Shia Zaidis, the Houthis as they are, is fairly, I would say, limited. It doesn't have the scale of Syria. In Syria, the difference is that the external powers were actively contributing to the Islamic State. And that is why it became as wide as it did. Here, I would say that it has got a limited framework, but the ideological underpinning is far more intense, which is why the hesitation in Pakistan.
Which brings me to this issue that, the whole talk was that Al-Qaeda leadership has been eliminated and Al-Qaeda is on the decline. It was ISIS which was the new threat. But now it seems that the Al-Qaeda has got got a new kick.
I'll tell you, Smita, personally, I do not subscribe to this particular formulation that the Al-Qaeda has been quote unquote eliminated. The reason I say this is that after 9/11,
the leadership got eliminated, and
they were on the ropes.
They were on the back front, and this whole ISIS.
So IS has emerged.
Big
but I think if there is a common thread as far as the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are concerned, it is the ideological underpinning. If you read for instance, their objectives, both the Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State are talking about their ultimate objective is the imposition of the Sharia.
And Yemen will be the laboratory?
Well, Syria was a laboratory.
It's
just that didn't work, and they were also pushed back.
Right.
But that does not mean that they do not have a constituency.
See, both these groups have always been desperate to have a country.
A territory, exactly.
A territory.
Territory and consolidate that.
Correct. So they wanted it in Afghanistan at some point of time. They wanted it in Syria. And now is it going to be Yemen? And because that, strategically it is so important with the Gulf of Aden, that is what is frightening even for South Asia. If they get hold of Yemen, then what happens?
I think, your point is right, that if you look at what they have attempted, these groups, whether it's the Al-Qaeda or the IS, you can even look at Somalia. You can look at what is happening in Nigeria. So my constant sort of plea is that this is not confined to one country. It has a very deep ideological underpinning, and we should be able to make an assessment about the determination and what is the ultimate objective. Now, as far as South Asia is concerned, I would like to make the point that any instability in West Asia, starting from Iran, Iraq, and going all the way up to Saudi Arabia, is not good news for the entire South Asian region. Two reasons. One is there is a physical demography. All of South Asia has up to 8 to 10 million people who are differently working in the entire region. Indians, Pakistanis, Bangladeshis, Sri Lankans, Nepalese, you name it, they are employed one way or the other. So there is a demography. This in turn translates into very valuable foreign exchange remittances. All these countries are dependent to a certain extent on the blue collar worker. And finally, of course, at a macro level, it is the energy security. Hydrocarbons is a critical component of the development effort of South Asia. So whether it is the oil market and the prices going north and hitting $100 mark, or the stability of oil supplies are critical to South Asia.
And
so
goes on to East Asia too, isn't
yeah,
it?
the whole region. You're
whole
right.
region,
yeah.
right? I mean, which is why I can't understand why China has not jumped in right now, because their oil imports also come in from that region.
Well, the silver lining is that as of now, while there is unrest in a country like Yemen, or for that matter in Syria, the big oil producers are relatively stable, starting with Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait. These have not seen any disruption. No, so the market has not witnessed a disruption of oil.
Don't the ships come from that?
They do. But I'm saying if it increases, and hypothetically you say that now any of these groups begin to target ships at sea, or they target oil installations, production facilities, that would have an impact. So I'm sure the Saudis are cognizant of this. They are also protecting their assets, and that is where they also rely on the Western powers.
What is the, okay, so that's where I come. UN, OIC, these international bodies, can they not play any role, or are they outdated?
They can,
already?
no, they can, but at this point, the sense one gets is that Saudi Arabia has mounted this initiative almost unilaterally. They have got the support of like-minded countries, and it's also a test case for both Saudi diplomacy and Saudi's military capability and its ability to put a coalition together. So this is my point, that the current opposition, or what the Saudis are dealing with along with the other powers, does not have a very credible profile. The Houthis are very tenacious fighters, and I'm sure they're going to retreat into the mountains. So there is no swift end to this.
So there's no military option which will be successful in the short term?
In the short term. And I think it will again become a festering kind of an issue, because it's not just the Shia Zaydis that we are talking about. Saudi Arabia's greater anxiety is the emergence of Iran as a credible pole.
They have denied it so far.
So far, both sides are denying it, but it's the reality. I mean, today Iran is emerging as a power that is likely to come back into the global committee. June 30th, after this particular nuclear accord agreement, if it becomes a final agreement, then the sanctions start getting lifted. You will see that it is Iran that becomes the more dominant
balance
regional
of power.
Shifts
completely.
Absolutely. It shifts, and that is the undercurrent of what I would call as the politics of the Islamic world. Shia Iran and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia as the Sunni representative of both, the guardian of the holy shrines, the mosque, as also politically the most, shall we say, financially credible power as far as the Arab world is concerned. So
you're going to see this conflict play up in not just Yemen, in other places?
It has ramifications, I would say, for the entire geopolitics of Islam, which would connect in a way Iran, Saudi and Turkey. Let's not forget that Turkey also is a very important player, particularly when we talk about Syria. And any country, whether it's a Saudi Arabia or an Iran, an Iraq or an India, you are first going to see it through the filter of your immediate national interest. So Saudi's national interest is to ensure that there is no flare-up as far as the Shia-dominated parts of Saudi Arabia are concerned. You remember Bahrain? When there was a certain unrest in Bahrain, in a very uncharacteristic move, Saudi tanks rolled across into Bahrain, and they put down that particular uprising because they didn't want the
Which
Shia
also had
faction.
a Pakistani element in that, right?
Well, because Pakistan provides support. You know, whenever they have been called upon, going back to the days of General Zia-ul Haq.
To both Bahrain and to Saudi Arabia.
All these Sunni, shall we say, led states in the region where the leadership, Pakistan has provided either visible or quiet support over the years. And as I said, going back to the days of General Zia, when the Holy Mosque was attacked in 1979, it was General Zia who airlifted almost 20,000 troops. Not only to deal with the immediate provocation, but also to provide a sustained support and train the local forces. So Pakistan has a military footprint in the region. Some of it is visible, some of it is kept below the radar. And this brings us back to the debate within Pakistan, meaning that should Pakistan be seen as militarily supporting what is now becoming a Saudi-led Sunni effort, because they have their own Shia population and the sensitivities that Pakistan has to deal with. So which is why I see this as a more complex issue and not just a question of militarily putting down the Houthis.
Thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you.